Welcome back, friends. I am going to talk today a little bit about how it's the small things that make the biggest impact. Here at the end of the year, I always like to reflect back on what has really gone right over the year, right? Because there's so many challenges. There are so many tough moments for us as parents, for our kids, for us emotionally when our kids are having a hard time. And so I like to just try to look back and notice some small things because those tiny things make the biggest impact sometimes. You've done more this year than you realize. I promise you. It may feel like you're not making progress. It may feel like your kid isn't making progress, and you might not be making big, sweeping progress, but you are making some progress, I promise. One thing for my own kid, who is 23 now, that I have noticed this past year is that he's starting to really focus on what he wants for himself, to focus on what he wants for his future. And that has been really tough with time blindness and this idea that things are either now or not now, and not now is like not on my mind, right? It's a struggle that is common with ADHD. And so it's been really tough to think about your future and what you might need to be doing now in order to get that life that you want later. This conversation is really going to be all about strengthening those roots that you can't see. Remember, just like with our kids, there's so much more underneath going on than what we really see on the surface. The same is true for how we are building skills, building resilience, building them up, emotional intelligence. All of those things are the roots that help them to succeed, to help things to be doable. And so we're really looking at not just that surface progress, like, well, we completed another grade, or my kid got honor roll, or, my kid didn't drop out this year, or, my kid finally learned to tie their shoes or ride a bike. We're looking at building those internal management skills that create a foundation for being able to thrive, for being able to feel and really achieve fulfillment. The nervous system always learns through repetition, not grand gestures. So our nervous system is looking for glimmers, those little tiny moments of safety, those tiny moments where our body goes, I've got this, I'm good. Things for me that are glimmers are toes in the sand at the beach, which doesn't happen very often, a really beautiful sunset, like big puffy pink clouds. I live in the mountains, so sometimes we have shadows from the clouds overlaying the mountains, and that is really beautiful. Those things give me little sparks of safety and little moments of peace. And that's what we're talking about with glimmers. So these are little tiny things that we want to repeat in order to help our nervous system feel safer and safer and safer. These are not big grand gestures. We're not going to suddenly go from a nervous system that is very frequently triggered, maybe very sensitive, to a nervous system that feels safe 99% of the time, right? And I'm not sure that 99% of the time feeling safe is a realistic goal for any human being. I don't think any of us feel safe. Our nervous systems feel safe and settled that much because we all ebb and flow through regulation and struggle, right? So tiny cues of safety are going to create the conditions for that bigger growth later. Think of it like building a snowball. We start with just this little tiny bit of snow that we can sort of pound together in our hands and get it to stick. But then as we roll it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We're not adding a ton to it at one time. We're just adding a few flakes each time we roll. But those few flakes are compounding and making it bigger and bigger, right? So connection can be a tiny cue of safety, connection with your kid. Leaving a note for them. This is something that I love to do. I coach clients to do all the time. I just had a coaching client say, I left a note on my kid's door the other day, my teenager. I don't even remember what the note was about, something that the parent noticed. And the kid actually came to her and said, "Thank you so much for this note. This was really cool. This made me feel good." So the tiniest little things, remember, if your kid did their chore and you didn't have to remind them, or you only had to remind them once when normally you have to remind them 5 times, go leave a little post-it on their pillow or their bedroom door or their bathroom mirror saying, "I noticed this and I'm really proud," or just noticing it alone makes a big difference. We tend to overlook these sort of micro wins for many reasons. We're exhausted, we're overwhelmed, we're comparing ourselves to other parents, other families' kids. We fear that we're not doing enough as a parent, that somehow we are failing our kid. And so that stuff screams really loudly at us because our brains are wired for the feelings of not safety, those negative things, to stick and be louder because it is there to protect us. So back in like caveman days when we were going out and hunting and gathering food and there were lions and tigers and bears at every turn, we needed a super sensitive autonomic nervous system trigger to say, "Ooh, I sense danger. I'm going to react in a way that is going to keep my body safe, or at least attempt to." And now we don't need so much of that, but our brains are still wired the same way. Our nervous system still has a louder voice when it is feeling threatened than when it feels safe. And so we tend to overlook those tiny wins because we're overwhelmed by all of the other stuff that is hard. That is not your fault. But it is something that you can work on. It is something that you can use some mindful and try to every day pick out one tiny little win and notice it. Just take that 30 seconds to stop and notice a micro win from the day and do it every day. And that will build safety for you. But also, if you're transparent about that, you're modeling this great practice for your kid as well. So small things compound always. Think about the snowball. I have like a few examples I want to share with you about what I mean by small things. Like, what do these really small micro wins look like in real life? It could be a kid who still resists homework, still doesn't like it, but now comes back to the table after taking a breather, a little break, instead of shutting down and refusing to do it for the entire day. It might be a teen or a young adult who repairs in 20 minutes in 3 days. I don't know about you, but I have been through some long silent periods from my kids at times. And when they start to be able to repair faster, to process and move forward faster, that's a win. It might be that you're a parent who catches your own bodyguard, that nervous system signals of being unsafe before reacting and choosing maybe connection over correction, over trying to control that situation. You might shift from making your kid do something to asking yourself, what is actually getting in the way? What is the struggle here that is causing them not to be able to do this? Shifting that thinking from won't to can't. And these aren't really minor, folks. These are new pathways forming in the brain. Their connection, their relationship, they are growth in safety. And the more things happen to us, the more our brain wires for them. That is true with both the positive and the negative. So again, we really have to focus and be intentional about noticing these micro wins. So we're talking all about here really that nervous system first lens. If we think about the nervous system first, what is it telling me? What is the signal it's sending me? What state is it in? What does that state mean? Does my kid need movement? Does my kid need less and quieter and slower? Um, these are the things that really build long-term regulation and long-term emotional intelligence. It also just creates this parenthood that's a lot more successful. If you're trying to force your kid to do something and they physiologically can't do it, you're never going to succeed and everybody is going to feel really, really bad. But if you're looking at the nervous system first and saying, does this kid feel safe? Are they regulated? If they are not regulated, what is it telling me that they need? And what can I do to change this? That is going to make a much bigger difference for you and your kid. Co-regulation, that borrowing of each other's nervous system energy, changes your kid's trajectory more quietly than you expect. Again, you're not going to see this big sweeping change all at once. That safety and connection is going to build over time. And those things create doability. Those things create um, emotions that we want to last, like joy and fun and laughter and playfulness. Lived in growth is really lived in growth. We are not going to create a lot of big breakthroughs, people. It's just not the way it works with our neurodivergent kids. And truly with all human beings, think about how many like big sweeping breakthroughs you've had where something just magically changed overnight and was so much better. Just doesn't really happen. So the reality is that they are slow, lived in growth, those micro moments that build and build. I want you to consider, where did your kids show you something this year, this little micro growth, even if it wasn't dramatic? Really think back about some things that might have gone a little better than you expected. And I'm going to give you a reflection practice here in just a minute when we finish out this episode. I'm sure that you often feel really alone in this parenting. I am certain that you feel a lot of doubt in what you're doing, whether you're doing the right thing, whether you're offering the right things. I am sure that you feel that nobody else sees how hard you're working, because you feel that the measure of that is your kid's success, big success, and that may not be happening right now. I see you. I know what this feels like. I have walked this path before you. I see how hard you are trying. And I promise you that your kid feels the difference. Even if they can't name it, even if they don't acknowledge it, they're not showing gratitude for it. They feel it. They feel how much you want to help them, how much you want to create something better for everyone. Remember, perfection doesn't exist. We measure progress by a forward movement, a forward trajectory. And sometimes, in all honesty, sometimes there is some regression, right? That is part of this journey. But when we are making progress in a forward movement, that is progress. That counts, no matter how tiny step is. So here is a really simple year-end reflection practice that I would love for you to take 5 minutes and think about or make notes about. Here are the questions. Name one moment that your kid showed a new skill or more capacity, more resilience, maybe, being able to try hard things for a longer amount of time. Just one moment from the year. Then name one moment that you responded differently than you would have a year ago. You're changing and progressing also. Name one pattern that softened. Maybe there is a typical trigger, a typical response pattern, and maybe that's starting to fade a little bit. Maybe that's not happening quite as frequently as it was before. And then your last question for yourself is to name one thing that you want to bring into this new year of 2026 intentionally. And I want you to keep it very bite sized, very doable. I want you to give yourself permission to take care of yourself, to parent differently, to let go of some demands at times. You don't need giant leaps to change your family's story, folks. You just don't. Those small things are actually big things in our parenting world. So notice one small thing today. Try to keep that going as a daily practice and really let it count and show that to your kids. Model to them that you are working on being intentional at noticing those small moments of progress, those small glimmers. You are not alone, folks. You're not alone. I promise you, there are so many parents out there listening to this podcast right now, nodding their head in agreement, feeling it, being in a similar space. You're not alone, and we're in this together. I am here to help you to walk this path in a way that makes you proud, in a way that you want to show up for your kid. As always, you can go to parentingadhdandautism.com to check out the show notes for this episode and also all of the resources that I provide outside of the podcast for families just like yours. I will see you on the next episode. Take good care, folks.